during the time of the Buddha, he was teaching not only nobles and kings and princes and all of these rich families, but he was also teaching common farmers. Now, what he taught had to be understood very easily by the farmers, or else they would not have tried the practice. It had to be easy to understand, and it had to work fairly quickly, or else they wouldn't trouble themselves. Now, I've read in some commentaries that from the time the Buddha started until he died, which was 45 years later, that he affected somewhere around 60 million people with his teaching. Now, it wasn't all just the Buddha, it was the monks that went out and they were teaching the Buddha's path too. But they didn't teach the Buddha's path until they saw directly what the Buddha was teaching. And their confidence became so strong that it was unshakable. Right now, there's an awful lot of people that want to be teachers, but they'll study for a little while, they'll do a few retreats, and then they'll claim that they're a teacher. And the only true teacher that I know of is the Buddha. And when you go back to the original teaching, then everything starts to become more and more clear. This is one of the reasons that I'm continually reading the suttas, because the Buddha is the teacher. I'm not the teacher. I'm a guide. I can understand and I can see what's happening with your practice. But we can always go back to the suttas to see what the Buddha said about that. So the Buddha is the teacher. And the closer we can stay with the teachings in the suttas, the easier and faster our progress becomes. The deeper your understanding will become because of the Buddha's teaching. You don't need to add anything. You don't need to subtract anything. All you need to do is go to the original teaching and follow the directions as closely as possible. So, when the Buddha was giving all of these discourses, he gave a lot of discourses to monks. He gave a lot of discourses to laymen. The monks he would generally spend a little bit more time with and go into more depth, because that's the profession of being a monk. Being a monk means that you have more time to study, you have more time to practice, you have more time to see for yourself what the Buddha was talking about. It is a real good idea that any time anyone is using a commentary, to take that commentary and compare it with what it says in the suttas themselves. If the commentary does not agree with what the suttas say, it's best not to use that commentary very much. It might have some great points in it, but if by and large there are mistakes when you compare it with the original teaching, then it will only cause confusion. and cause more misunderstanding about what the emphasis of the practice is. So if you take the sutta, if you take the commentaries and you put them on the shelf where they belong, just as reference to see, and go to the original teachings, you might find that the kind of practice that you've been using for however many years doesn't really agree so well with what the suttas are teaching. An example of this is the Satipatthana Sutta and the directions in the mindfulness of breathing in that sutta. And I'll read to you what the Satipatthana Sutta says. This is not my interpretation. This is what the sutta says. It says, contemplation of body, mindfulness of breathing. This is section number 4 in sutta number 10 in the middling sayings. And how, monks, does a monk abide contemplating the body as a body? Here a monk gone to the forest or to the root of a tree or empty hut sits down, having folded his legs crosswise, set his body erect, and establishes mindfulness in front of him. Ever mindful he breathes in, mindful he breathes out. Breathing in long, he understands, I breathe in long. Or breathing out long, he understands, I breathe out long. Breathing in short, he understands, I breathe in short. Breathing out short, he understands, I breathe out short. Now the first 2 sentences here are talking about understanding that you know what the breath is doing. It's nothing to do with breath body. It has to do with the breath itself. You understand when you take a long breath, you understand when you take a short breath. It does not say to focus only on the breath. It does not mention your nostril tip, your upper lip, or your abdomen. It just says you know when you take a long breath and when you take a short breath. Now we get into the actual instructions on the meditation. He trains thus. These are key words because this is how you train yourself. I shall breathe in, experiencing the whole body. He trains thus. I shall breathe out, experiencing the whole body. This is not body of breath. This is the entire body. Now, he trains thus. I shall breathe in, tranquilizing the bodily formation. He trains thus, I shall breathe out, tranquilizing the bodily formation. So it's saying that on the in-breath, you tranquilize the bodily formation. On the out-breath, you tranquilize the bodily formation. What does that mean? It means that if there is any tension or tightness anywhere in your body, you relax it on the in-breath and you relax it on the out-breath. This step has been forgotten, not used, with a lot of people that are practicing meditation today. This step is a very, very important part of the meditation. There is a tightness that is very subtle that occurs in the head, around your brain. There's a membrane around your brain that kind of holds your brain all together. Every time there is any kind of distraction, it contracts. And with that contraction, there's a tension or tightness that arises. On the in-breath, you relax that tension or tightness. on the out-breath, you relax that tension or tightness. When your mind becomes distracted, you notice that your mind is distracted. You let that distraction be there by itself and relax the tension or tightness caused by mind's attention moving to that distraction. The more you become familiar with how that tension or tightness arises, the easier it is to see that. Now, what is this tension or tightness that arises? This tension or tightness that arises is craving. And every time you let go of craving, you feel your mind expand and then become calm. Every time you let go of craving, your mind is pure at that time. Your awareness is very sharp. There are no thoughts. There's just this pure awareness. And you bring this pure awareness back to your object of meditation. So every time you let go of tension and tightness, you are letting go of craving, which happens to be the second noble truth. The cause of suffering is craving. When you let go of that craving, that purity of mind, at that moment is the cessation of suffering. And you do this on the in-breath, and you do this on the out-breath. There's a distraction, you let the distraction be, you relax, bring that pure mind back to your object of meditation, and relax some more. These kind of instructions need to be followed very closely. Now, this is what I was reading from the Satipatthana Sutta. Just as a skilled lathe operator or his apprentice, when making a long turn, understands I make a long turn, or when making a short turn, understands I make a short turn. That means that he's not thinking about, he's just doing. He understands. So too, breathing in long, a monk understands I breathe in long. So, when we start following the directions of the Buddha with the mindfulness of breathing, we can also carry these same directions over to the practice of loving kindness. Anytime there is a distraction and your mind's attention moves from the feeling of loving kindness and making a wish for happiness to that distraction, whatever it happens to be, there is tension and tightness that arises at that time. You allow the feeling to be there by itself and relax. Bring that clear, pure mind back to the feeling of loving kindness, making a wish for